Cornelius. This event happened about 10 years after Pentecost. Cornelius was a centurion, which meant he was over 100 soldiers, fighting men. He lived in Caesarea, which was the Roman capital for the area. The Jews held that Jerusalem was the capital, which was true for them, but Rome held that Caesarea was, and it was mostly a Gentile city. It happens about 10 years, like I mentioned, but think about the 10 years of pressure that's growing, pressure upon the Gentiles. They hear about these followers of Jesus and how it changed their life, and they can have forgiveness of sins and eternal life. And how can I get that? Oh, no. It's only for the Jews. Oh, to hear about something you want and can't have. The pressure is building. So that when Cornelius accepts Christ and the church in Jerusalem admits the fact that God was now working with Gentiles, the pressure lets loose all over the empire. And especially as we go into Antioch in the next story on how so many Gentile believers came into the church. This was meant to happen. But the question is, why did the angel tell Cornelius to send soldiers down to Joppa to get Peter when Philip lived right in town? Philip, the evangelist. He was probably no more than 10 or 15-minute walk away from Cornelius' house, if that. Well, it's because this was a very big event, and it needed to be an apostle to open the door, but especially it had to be Peter. He was the one that was assigned to make this happen. He was the one that could go back to Jerusalem and convince them this had to be. Peter was being prepared. Not only did he have the sheet that came out of heaven, but he was living with Simon the tanner by the sea. That was a stretch even for Peter. Simon was unclean. He was Jewish, but he was a tanner, which means he worked with dead bodies. He was not allowed to go to the synagogue, and no one could even touch him. And a tanner not only was unclean, but they had to have their house out of town because of the chemicals and the smell. It's interesting, it says a tanner by the sea. That was a great place to get those fresh airs coming in. And Peter was staying there, and I always think it's kind of interesting that it says at the noon prayer time that he decided to go up to the rooftop. Oh, don't blame him. Get a little bit of fresh air, maybe get my appetite for lunch back. And it was there that God dealt with him and even prepared him more for going with these men. Well, when Cornelius accepts Christ, of course, we know the impact that it makes upon the church at Jerusalem and across the entire nation as the buzz went up about what? God is now working with Gentiles? Yes, that's true, but think of the impact that it made upon the city of Rome. This was a Roman official. This was a Roman centurion. He had to make certain trips back to the city. Of course, when he got there, he told people what happened to him. So that Paul later on refers to the Christians that are at Rome, not only in the Jews and among the Gentiles, but even in the household of Caesar. Well, this is where that started. This impacted even the household of Caesar. What an impact. But think about it. The church at Jerusalem finally admits that God's now working with Gentiles, and that's accepted. But this opens up a can of worms. There's so many things that had to be thought through. But we really don't get into that until the next story when we go to Antioch. And we continue on with more insights on the story.